Just to start, good to be back here in the building, back working, back talking to all of you. Takes me back to 2020 a little bit, but it's just been good to get back to work and playing football, playing fast, and learning the new players on the team, the young players, getting these reps and this experience. It's so valuable, and we're learning something new every day as an offense and as a team. And I do think that time spent together is very valuable when it comes to building chemistry and people getting to know each other, not only on the field but off the field. So it's very valuable time right now, and we're trying to maximize it. And we are getting a lot of good work in, despite the heat that we've had the last few days. So with that, I'll take any questions you have.
We'll go Chris and then Eric.
Oh, hey, Kirk, good to talk to you. Hope everything's going well for you. Hey, wanted to know, what was kind of your initial reaction when the Vikings drafted Kellen Mond, and then what were your conversations like with Rick Spielman after that in terms of why that move was made?
Yeah, there was good communication through the process, and Kellen's been great, working hard and picking up our offense quickly. So it's been a good process, and we're just kind of building this thing right now to keep ramping up as we get closer to September.
Hey, Kirk, you mentioned the valuable time right now. Obviously, in regards to Justin, you did not have this a year ago with him on the field. How much of a difference do you think I hope you guys make this year, and what's that rapport with you and him? Where are you guys at right now?
It's a good question, because I think part of the reason you didn't see Justin as much in weeks 1 and 2 of the season would partly be due to the fact that the offseason was much shorter, or there really wasn't an offseason, and all we had was training camp, and even much of training camp early on was walkthroughs. And so it became difficult to not only evaluate someone to see what they're ready to do, but also just all that we were throwing at him. It's much easier to learn it when you're playing football as opposed to just talking about it in a meeting or in a walkthrough. So there's value now for the next wave of young players coming through to be able to have that time on task. Certainly Justin, proved that he was caught up to speed very quickly and had a great rookie year. So now it's just about, building on that, and now being able to be consistent, year in and year out moving forward. And he has had a great 8 practices, I believe is how many we've had. He's had a great, 8 practices, and certainly looks to be the same player that he was last year. And it's I would say the same of a lot of other guys on our offense.
Joe and then Will.
Yeah, Kirk, I'm wondering just how much time in the offseason you spend taking a look at past games, and then out of that, you get the emphasis on what you want to concentrate on in the offseason heading into camp.
Yes, great question. This year I decided to go back and really watch my whole career, watch a couple other offenses to see what they have been doing or what they did the year that they had a lot of success. And I do think that time looking at tape, through the winter and the spring, and even now as I go home, through the summer after next week, I do think that it's helpful to, to see what has worked in the past, what, I want to make as a staple for myself as I move forward, but then also, where I have improved or where I need to improve. And that evaluation certainly comes from your coaches day in and day out, but there's also got to be an ability to self-evaluate and say, I like what I'm doing there, keep doing that, or that's not good enough, I want to improve that. And I think being self-led and being tough on yourself can really help too as you watch tape, that you put out there.
Kirk, at practice today, we saw you connect with Tyler Conklin a number of times. With Kyle gone, what have you kind of seen from not only Tyler but Irv as well, and those tight ends early on in the spring period?
Both of them have had a really strong 8 practices, and it's been fun to see what they're continuing to be capable of. I could compliment them for a while because they're deserving of it. And I'd also say that some of our younger tight ends have done really well as well. Brandon Dillon Zilly, I think, has flashed quite a bit with his athleticism. You see that he was a former wide receiver, and that shows up in his ability to run routes, make difficult catches, and just be really comfortable in the pass game. And Zach as well. He just has a great size and frame, which you love, especially down in the red zone. And he's been separating in a lot of the match coverages that you see where, he's got to create separation versus a defensive back, and he's doing it. So that's been fun to see from all those guys. The challenge is the tight end position requires so much mentally. You have to learn the whole run game. You got to learn all the protections. You also got to learn all the pass games. So you pretty much have to learn like you're playing receiver, offensive line, and running back all in one. And it's a lot to put on somebody early. And so for Zach and Zilly, it's a lot of volume coming at them. But Irv and Conk, you see now with several years how they've kind of emerged as these veterans that now are really confident and know what's coming and have that that confidence on the field.
Couple questions from Courtney and then Sam.
Hey, Kirk. When this is a kind of like a broad question about quarterbacks and the dynamic when a young guy is brought in, because I remember a few years ago when Mason Rudolph was drafted by the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger was asked about, well, do you what's your role as the veteran guy, the established guy? Do you bring him along? Do you train him effectively? And he's like, well, he's got it. That's kind of on him. Where this kind of feels like the one position in sports that we almost unfairly put it on the veteran guy to bring everybody else along and expect that potentially one day that somebody could supplant somebody for their job. As a veteran guy, as the established guy, how do you approach when they bring new quarterbacks in here to learn under you? Is it something that you seek out, like almost like a teaching tool, things like that? How do you go about that with Kellen and any other young quarterback?
I think you do the same thing. I do the same thing I've done with Nate Stanley, Jake Browning, Nate Sudfeld back when I was in Washington. You're an open book. You're helpful and you're there and make yourself available. And I had Rex Grossman when I was a rookie, and Rex had played in a Super Bowl and won a lot of playoff games and started a lot of games in the NFL and was in year 10. So it was great to be able to learn from him, and he was a big part of my early development as a football player. And I really took every word that he said to heart because I felt like he had been there, he had done that, he knew what it should look like, and I hung on his every word. So I've been there and want to certainly be that same resource whenever possible.
Sam, and then Eric, and then Chris.
Yeah, Kirk, you've been on the offensive coordinator carousel for pretty much your whole career. So what have you learned about what's important in cultivating those new relationships every summer?
Yeah, great question. We're kind of in that process right now, going through it of the dynamic. I think what's interesting to kind of work through is the offense is very similar, essentially the same. So it's not so much the plays, it's more just the personality or the communication, the person behind the plays, the human being, if you will. And so while that changes, there are dynamics that you want to learn and observe. And the same for Andrew Janocko as the quarterback coach. The quarterback room when Clint's not there, then I'd say, okay, this is a different year, it has a different feel to it, different people in the room. So time certainly helps, just being together, meetings, practice, and kind of then being able to say, okay, this is how it's going to go, just with our time on task. It shows me that. And, that's where this OTA time becomes very valuable. But it also is a positive that Clint's been my quarterback coach for 2 years. So I've spent so much time with him in the quarterback room, and I'd like to think he really knows how I'm wired, what I like. He's heard so much feedback for the last couple of years, and I think that certainly helps. But it's been unique to look back over 6 years and have 6 different play callers. I never would have thought that would happen, but I've been fortunate to be in pretty similar systems for the most part over those 6 years, and I think that's a blessing because a lot of quarterbacks will have to change systems entirely, and that's another conversation.
Kirk, you mentioned earlier that you went back and watched your whole career. Was that the first time you had done that? Like in previous years, had you just go back and watch the previous season, like just 16 games? And then was it the first time you'd watched all, 100 plus?
Yes, is the short answer. I wanted to go back and just really study it, create cut-ups, kind of build up some volume that I could pull from as we go forward. I regret that I hadn't done it earlier in my career, but I did, get the film set up at my house to basically have access to all of that, so that all off season, even if I'm not in the facility, I would have access to tape. And I do think it's been a really valuable resource to have, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't do it sooner in my career. But it's just a piece that I think hopefully can help me improve this coming year.
Chris and then Courtney.
Oh, hey, Kirk, just two quick things. I guess the first thing is the defense should be a lot better in the Vikings this year, with a lot of players returning and some new acquisitions. How can that improved defense help the offense?
I think I was a broken record a little bit last season talking about complementary football and how offense, defense, special teams tend to feed off one another. And when one's flowing, then the other one is able to build off that. And I think that's, to answer your question, it really is complementary football. So, we try to feed off each other. And really my focus on offense as a quarterback is how can we help, special teams, how can we help the defense? But you're right. We brought in some great players. I'm really excited about Michael Pierce and Dalvin Tomlinson, getting Stephen Weatherly back. Obviously, Patrick Peterson's a name that's well known, and one of the few guys that I could say that I've played with or will play with in my career that are, probably going to be in Canton someday. That there aren't a lot of those guys after a 9-year career of mine where I can look back and say that. And so, it's exciting to have someone like that on your team. And there's a lot of great players on the defense, but I think you can go back to Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr as guys who have been here all along. Obviously had some injuries last year, but I think those guys in many ways are kind of the heart and soul of that defense. And when I go against them every day, those are two that I feel like I'm always in a bit of a chess match with. It's really those two guys.
And just one more follow on Kellen Mond. What are some of the specific things you've really been working with him on, and what have you thought of his game so far from what you've seen?
I think the big piece right now, and I lived it back in 2012, is just being able to take in the volume of offense that's being thrown at you. And the terminology is likely new. The plays at times are likely new. And so processing that volume, taking in that volume to where you can go out and play off instinct and not have to be thinking is really the focus, as a rookie quarterback in OTAs. And I think that's where he's focused.
Kirk, we've heard from a couple other teams around the league about vaccination efforts, and I think your former team brought in some experts to talk to players. What have the Vikings done as far as protection against COVID, vaccine education, making sure that most of the locker rooms vaccinated, if not everybody? Where does I guess things stand on that during OTAs?
Yeah, true to form, going back through last year and the protocols in the buildings, the Vikings have really been on top of it. We have had a seminar. We'll have another seminar this Friday. They've made it available here at the facility, so they're, have been making it very available.
Arif and then Jeff.
Another question about you looking back over your whole career. What have you learned about yourself going back to all your NFL throws, things you've gotten better at, things you've maybe wanted to improve on and haven't yet, maybe even things you got worse at?
It's a great question, and one that I've been asking myself, right, as I watch. I heard Tom Brady when that TV show came out that was called The Brady Six, where it talked about the people who were drafted ahead of him and followed their journeys. And Tom, at one point in the long documentary that was very interesting, he was quoted as saying, I watched myself on film, and to this day, I still don't feel like I'm that good. And I really felt that sentiment when he said it. I was in college, but I understood what he meant. And now going back and watching my career, I would echo that same sentiment, that I watch myself in 12 and 13 and 14 and think, man, I'm such a better quarterback now. I can't believe that the coaches didn't just cut me when I did that, made that mistake. I can't believe they were so patient with me, because nowadays, looking back, that would just be unacceptable to myself, allowing myself to play that way or make that read or make that throw or that decision. So that was one thing that kind of jumped out to me. The other thing that just jumps out is the players you play with. You realize that the way Pierre Garçon ran a route or Deshaun Jackson ran a route, that affects you in the way you play and the way you think. And then you come to a new team and you're trying to tell Adam Thielen to run a route that way, and he's saying, no, I don't do it that way. And so just the process of then learning those players and saying, okay, and understanding that you always have to be aware of what your teammates do well and try to put them in those positions to be successful. I could probably go on for a while about different pieces I've learned. Certainly have taken a lot of notes and created some fun cut-ups that I'll have now for really as long as I'm around football. And, it's been a good exercise.
Jeff, last question.
Kirk, you touched on chemistry earlier. Just could you kind of speak to the importance of making sure that everybody's there when these workouts are voluntary? I think as an offense, you guys have had, if not perfect attendance, near perfect attendance. What does it mean to you to have everybody there over the last 3 weeks, and how motivating is it to get together like you have, given how last year ended?
Yep, we have had great attendance, and just about everybody's here, and it's been fun to get that work in. And I do think chemistry is important. I remember back at Michigan State, not to keep living in the past, but I remember our team got better as we got to know each other better and as we got to spend more time with one another. And the NFL, there's a lot of turnover year to year, and so it can be a little bit more of a challenge to create what you had back in high school or college in terms of that locker room feel. But this time, the OTAs gives us a chance to do that because even if it is a new group, you have a time to build that foundation. And so that's, I think, a great challenge of the leaders in our locker room to try to build that and create that where we have a great group of guys, but let's allow that great group of guys to really get to know each other too and spend time together and not just go out and be, doing our job independently, but truly doing it, loving the guy next to us and leaning on one another and caring about the guy next to us. And you always believe that there's that, extra inch or that extra heartbeat that comes from that can help you win on Sundays in the fall.